Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets, with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today, I am here with USA Today and Sunday Times bestselling author Rebecca Thorne. Most known for Can't Spell Treason Without T, today we are here to celebrate the release of the third novel in the series, See You at the Altar. Rebecca, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm so great. It's so good to be here.
So you are releasing your third novel today. Why
Yes.
don't you tell us a little bit about the series for those who haven't picked it up yet?
Yeah, so the Tomes and Tea series is a quartet. So this is book 3 of 4. The fourth one will be out in August, August 12th of 2025. So it's coming out pretty quickly. And this book series follows 2 lesbian women who are in an established relationship, and they decide to abandon their intense fantasy lives to open a bookshop that serves tea. And that's the plot.
And
So
that's the plot.
that's it. That's what they got. You know, book 1 is literally just them abandoning everything to do the dream that they've always had together. So we get to watch as they move in together and then go through like the engagement process. And then this book is the book that they get married, which is lovely.
Finally.
Finally, yes. So excited.
You know, really, they're living everyone's dream here.
Yeah,
Bookshop,
they're living mine. That's for
tea
sure.
shop. They have swords and magic and
Mhm.
griffins. Like
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
everyone's dream. Definitely mine.
Yeah, this book has baby dragons in it. So book 2 was following them as they were searching for these missing dragon eggs. And you know, I mean, I don't really think it's that much of a spoiler to say that they found them. So in book 3, there are these 2 baby dragons that are playing around with one of their griffins, and it's just chaos. It's like unleashing like a cat and 2 very stupid dogs. But like they're really big and can fly. And it's like the cat is just controlling the 2 dogs, and they're just flying all over the place, causing mayhem during a week that already is going to be very, very chaotic for my main characters. So it's all kinds of fun. Like I feel like if anybody really liked the Griffins in books 1 and 2, they're gonna die when they see the dragons. They're awesome.
I have always held the opinion that dragons are just big winged cats.
Yeah, I kind of vibe with that, honestly. That's pretty much how I treat these 2. One of them is named Gold Coin because he read a book by Raina, my main character. She read a book that was basically just talking about a dragon hoarding gold. And so he started hoarding gold because he thought that was like the thing that dragons do, which isn't true in my book series. But he did. So he starts, so he steals kind of like trinkets here and there when he can. And his name is Gold Coin. And then the other one is called Pillbug because he really likes bugs and like loves to, so he found like fascination with a pillbug when he was really young. So they just named him Pillbug. The dragons don't actually have names in this book series. Like the dragon culture is not to really have names, but they don't really care that the humans have assigned them names. So, for simplicity's sake, my main characters are just like, yes, it's Gold Coin and Pillbug. And the dragons are like, okay.
I cannot wait to read this one. I did recently read the first 2 in the series, and they are just so cozy and comforting, and they still have some excitement, but still have like that cozy feeling to it, which is something that I really like because I don't read too much cozy fantasy. I normally prefer higher stakes. So we still do have some stakes for the readers who prefer that, as well as that cozy, bookish atmosphere.
Yeah, I was trying really hard to balance that when I was writing this book series. For anyone who's unfamiliar, I published this book series the same year that Legends and Lattes came out, kind of before the cozy fantasy like craze took hold. So this book, Can't Spell Treason Without T, was published in September of 2022 by me, self-published. And then it was picked up by Tor, the, bigger publisher in 2023. So when I was writing this book over the summer, like there really wasn't anything else like this except for Legends and Lattes. And I knew that I like adored Legends and Lattes, but I'm also very ADHD and need like a little more engagement and like action, I think, for me. So reading it was a delight, but when I'm writing something, it's very hard for me to sink into the coziness and not have any stakes. So I was trying to find that balance between like, well, how far can we go with higher stakes in a cozy fantasy while still having it be cozy? So that was something that I was really trying to kind of find the line for, because I felt like if there wasn't more books like that in this genre as it was getting started, there might be a limit to how many stakes we can add to those books later. You know what I mean? Like as the genre takes hold and as readers start to grow expectations around what this is, people would be like, well, there's too high a stakes for that. It's not really a cozy. And people still do say that about my books, but I do think that they have opened the door for a smaller subsect of authors like me who wanted cozy vibes, and like happy endings, but with some action that's happening throughout. So I'm starting to see cozy fantasies like that as well over the last couple of years that are kind of falling into that higher stakes, even while being cozy vibe, which is really nice. I kind of feel like I always say that I feel like you can't really appreciate the warmth of a fire if you haven't been outside in the cold. And I feel like that's kind of how my books balance that. Like, I don't really think that you can appreciate how the cozy moments come in if you haven't seen some action beforehand that are like threatening the cozy moments. So
That is such a good way of putting it. I definitely had not thought of it that way before. But you're completely correct on that because it does make
yeah.
those sweet and just enjoyable day-to-day moments more special because you've seen how much they've had to fight to get there. And
Mhm.
we've seen what stakes can threaten that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And yeah,
just
so you
felt
got to have
like,
some risk in the reward for suffering through the risk.
right. Right. Well, and I feel like even in today's world, like if we just only had lovely, cozy utopia, like we watch utopia, like we've all read the utopian books. They're not utopian, right? Like, and I think they kind of identify that idea of like, well, you can have a utopia, but eventually you can't even appreciate how the utopia is, or you become numb to it because you haven't had anything to threaten it, And so it almost makes like those moments, like those quiet moments where they're having a cup of tea by the fire become more valuable because we've gotten to see them fighting dragons in the last chapter. Like we know what they could have lost, and the fact that they are still making time for each other in that moment is lovely. Like that's what's cozy to me. So
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
mhm. Thank you.
So I would like, you are very welcome. I would like to talk about some of your writing inspirations for this series.
Yes, my writing inspirations were definitely Legends and Lattes, and I feel like I've been really upfront about that. I read Legends and Lattes when in March of 2022 when I was going through like a very, very rough year. Like I had sold my house and then like thought I had another house lined up and then was kind of screwed over that process. And I ended up basically being homeless and bouncing between a couple friends' houses over the course of like 6 months. I tried to make a move to Denver and just ended up with this like really bad roommate situation where I had to leave the house immediately. And I literally landed at my parents' house after that. And it was just really unfortunate and like defeating and sad. And I went to the bookstore looking for like some kind of escape. And I ended up finding a a book on the shelves that I was like, wait, I saw that on TikTok. That looks really familiar. And then I was like, isn't that a self-published book? That's so weird that I found it in a Barnes and Noble. And I picked it up, and that book was Legends and Lattes. And I was like drawn in by the high fantasy with low stakes kind of vibe. So that was definitely my big inspiration. I read that book at a time when I just desperately needed something like that. And I remember emailing Travis Baldree like a month after or like a couple weeks after I read the book. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm so in love with this book. I want to write a cozy fantasy. And he was so sweet. He wrote me back and was like, oh my gosh, that would be so great if you would write one of those. Like, I would love to read it. And then he like sent me, and I asked him, I was like, can I, like, if I send you my copy, will you sign it? And he was like, I'll just send you a signed copy. And so he sent me this signed copy that was very much like he signed it and it said, can't wait to read your cozy fantasy on like the signed copy. So I have a signed copy of Legends and Lattes from like 2022 where Travis Baldree was basically just like, yes, please fill out this genre. And I don't really know if he knew how much that meant to me, but it meant a lot. Like it was just very nice to kind of have permission almost to enter this space that I didn't really know was mine, but became mine. And I'm just like incredibly grateful for that kind of inspiration and ability to kind of move forward that way. It was nice. It was really nice.
One thing I always love to see is when authors really support and uplift newer authors or even
Yeah.
just new to the genre authors like that. That is
Hmm.
so wonderful. Like that honestly, like I was already a fan of Travis because I love Legends and Lattes.
Hmm.
But honestly,
He's like the
hearing that
nicest guy
story,
though.
yeah,
No, like
like the
he's like the
sweetest
nice.
thing.
Yeah, well, and I feel like I can wax poetic about the things that he did for this genre and for queer people. And like as a queer person, I feel like I can wax poetic about that because he didn't have like he's a straight white man, straight by my assumption, but he is married to a woman and white man, right? And he could have written anything. Like he could have written a hetero couple. He could have done anything with that book that he wanted, but he chose to write a lesbian couple into that novel. And that opened up the ability for cozy fantasy to become a an LGBT safe haven for people. Like if you read books now, probably half of them are queer. And for a while they were all queer. And that was very unique for a new genre. Like if you look at
Yeah.
romantasy, queer has a very hard time breaking into romantasy because it was started by like Sarah J. Maas, Rebecca Yarros, right? Like they're hetero couples and they attract hetero readers. But this book was very pointedly like appealing to a wide audience, but also identifying that queer undertone. And that made it a very safe space for us. And he did it so well. Like when I picked up that
Yeah.
book, I was like, oh, they're lesbians. And I was like, and I flipped to the back and looked at his picture and was like, oh, a white man writing lesbians. Let's see how this is. Let's go. And then I read it and I was like, oh my God, they're perfect. Like I love them. Like it was just it was nice to see so like natural representation where they're just people being people, even when they're an orc and a succubus, right? Like they're just people being people doing the things that they want to do, right? I love that. I just love that.
Yeah, the characters felt very real and authentic. And I will even say this loudly on the podcast. I very rarely read books written by men, but especially by white men, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe one a
Yeah.
year, occasionally
Yeah.
two a
Same.
year. But I will
Yeah.
easily go a year or longer without
Mm-hmm.
even touching a book by a white man. And
It's
so I
just
am,
hard to
I
find
think
good
that's
ones.
that's high praise, that I
Yeah.
have picked up both of the books in that series and I
Mm-hmm.
own them. So I even
Mm-hmm.
purchased them.
Yeah. No, it's hard to find books. I think it's hard to find female focused books by men that are treating women like real people. Like I feel like we have so many stereotypes about what women are supposed to be. And like I've listened to Travis talk about these types of things in like podcasts and stuff where he has commented that like it was a very pointed choice for him to put in this lesbian couple because he knew that there's so much of the same out there for him. And he's like talked about his platform and how as a white man he gets more attention and more praise, and he had a choice when he sat down to write that novel about what he wanted to do with it. And he decided to lift up those voices instead. And I feel like that is so wonderful. Like I was very skeptical about how the execution was going to be, but the fact that he just wrote two people being people, like in Bookshops and Bone Dust, the epilogue was my favorite part of that whole book because it just was two people like in love being people. And I just love that. I feel like cozy fantasy has really become kind of like a safe haven for diversity in that way. And I love that side of it. And it's really great to see that we're starting to see more like cultural versions of cozy fantasy, right? Like The Teller of Small Fortunes just came out by Julie Leong, and it wasn't like the Western fantasy, like it melded Western and like Eastern cultures together to kind of show what it was like for someone from an Eastern culture to come over into a Western culture and still try to find things that felt cozy based on what they knew, and that book was so well done. Like I loved it. I sunk into it and I couldn't pull myself out. Like it was so good. So if
I
you guys are
had,
looking for a new cozy
yes,
fantasy, The Teller of Small Fortunes is easily my favorite one since Legends and Lattes. Like, and that's hard to say because I've read so many good ones by this point, but like it skyrocketed to the top. I loved it.
I had an art copy for The Teller of Lost Fortunes, and you are so on. It was beautifully written, five
Her
star
writing
book.
style is like so like I literally was like, this is your debut? Like, are you kidding?
Right? Like it did not
Like,
read like a debut.
yeah, it did not. I was literally like, I feel like people think that Treason is my debut and like they don't know. Like I actually I traditionally published a middle grade book in 2021 that no one really knew and we got the rights to. It's out of print now. And then but I've been in the industry forever and like Treason was actually the 15th book I ever wrote. So it was like I literally like I'm sure she's written books, you know, like Julie Young. I'm sure she's written books outside of that, but like oh my God, that was like the most jaw-dropping like debut ever. Like I loved, I was literally like, oh my God, this is so good. Like her sentence structure, her characterization, her world building, everything was on point. I loved it. It was so good. Can't wait for her new one. Apparently it's like Warehouse 13. Did you ever see that show?
It's on my Netflix binge list. I've
It's
seen
so
like
good. It's
random
so
bits and
good.
pieces when they were like replaying reruns on like the Sci-Fi
Hmm.
Channel or something. So
Yeah.
I have liked what I have seen, not that I know what any of it meant.
Yeah, it's one of those like Doctor Who kind of shows. Like it
Hmm.
felt like as magical and wonderful as Doctor Who to me. But it also felt kind of like Firefly. It was like a really fun mix between like the vibes of Doctor Who with like the found family of Firefly. It was very fun. But yeah, so Julie Leong's new series is apparently like Warehouse 13, but with like magical artifacts by like a mage who has to like categorize them. And I can't I literally like she emailed me and was like, "Do you want an arc?" And I was like, "The fastest yes that has ever yesed. Like, yes, I want an arc. Please send me a physical copy. Sign it if you can." Like, so yeah, I'm so stoked. There's so many good people entering this genre now. Like, there's so many good versions of this book. Like Sarah Beth Durst's Spell Shop like blew me away. I loved it was so cozy. And like I don't read hetero books very often, but like it was so cozy and I loved it. And I was like so there for the love story. I was literally like, this is the greatest world building ever. Like I thought it was so cool. So I don't know. And then like House of Frank. Like have you read House of
I
Frank
haven't
by
read
Kay
that one yet.
Sinclair?
No.
Oh my God, it's very sad. It's very sad. So
Oh.
like be prepared for like it's based around grief and what happens when you lose somebody and like how you recover from that. And it kind of focuses on like this house where people can move through their grief as they're like planting their loved ones into becoming trees, right? Right. Like there's like an arboretum in
Oh.
the backyard. And so it kind of focuses on all these different people that came to the house and never left. And then they're just they're just kind of moving through their grief in different ways. And it really does kind of personify how like some people can move on quickly from grief and some people it sticks with them for years and they never can move on. And it was beautifully written. I mean, truly, Kay Sinclair, again, another debut that I was just like, this is your first book? Like I literally am like, oh my God, if you guys read my first book, it was awful. Like oh, it
Another
was so fun.
cozy one that I really like is The Honey Witch by
Yeah,
Sydney
that
J.
one was great.
Shields. Oh, it
I
was
loved it.
so beautiful. From the
Yeah.
cover and all the way to the final page. I loved that one.
Yeah, I think with that one, I'm like, I wanted both. Like I wanted more of the Bridgerton vibes where they're like in proper society. And then I also wanted more of the island. And I couldn't like so like they kept going back and forth. And like when they went back to like the Bridgerton side, I was like, no, wait, but the island. And then when they came back to the island, I'm like, no, wait, but the Bridgerton like I feel like I couldn't decide what I wanted in that book. I was like, oh my gosh, I want everything. Like give me all of it, you know?
Yes, I just
Apparently
want
her
it
new
all.
book is going to be very dramatic and dark. Like I'm curious to see what her next story is because apparently it's like gothic and dark. I'll be interested to read it.
Ooh, yeah, that'll be really
Hmm.
interesting to see. I do like when authors like play with different genres and completely opposite genres. Like here I'll write something cozy and sweet and nice with a good happy ending. And then, oh, do you think that's all right? No, here we go with the gothic,
Uh-huh.
the drama,
Yeah.
the horror, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that was
Something I really
like
love.
yeah, that was kind of what I was trying to do with Gilded Abyss. So I wrote Treason and Pirates in like very rapid succession in 2022 and then into 2023. And then I was in my graduate, like I got my MFA that year, graduated in May. So of course that last semester was my thesis, and my thesis for my MFA was a novel. So I pivoted into Gilded Abyss because that's what I kind of been casually working on throughout the rest of it. And it was literally just because I was like I feel bad because like I didn't expect Treason to go anywhere. Like I was hoping it would, obviously. Like I had dreams, but like I realistically, like I've been in the publishing industry so long that I was like, it's probably no one will read it, but I'm gonna write it anyway and self-publish and we'll see what we've got, right? And it was one of those things where I threw this world building in there that wasn't very good because I wanted it to be like as basic and as entry level to fantasy as possible. So people who have never read fantasy can start with cozy fantasy and kind of get like a feel for the genre, right? So I purposely did it vague and then like wrote it really quickly. And I felt really bad that that series gained such popularity with like such bad world building in book 1 and 2. And I feel like I'm trying in books 3 and 4 to like expand that world building and make it more intricate. But Gilded Abyss was kind of like my like I wanted something darker, I wanted something edgy, I wanted like death and violence and like misery, but then I also wanted something that was like very vividly world building based, and that was the book that I came up with. So I feel like when you read through my backlist, you're like, oh my gosh, the Tomes and Tea series is so fun, what a great entry level, and then you pick up Gilded Abyss and it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? like I feel like people read that book and they're just like, what happened, Rebecca? Like
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets, with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
We've talked about this briefly towards the beginning of the podcast, but let's talk more about how your publishing journey came about.
Yeah, it was wild. Well, let me rephrase. It was very slow and very tedious until the exact moment that it was wild. And then it's just kind of been a ride since then. So I have been in the industry for upwards of 10 years now. And a lot of people don't realize that. I started querying books. I was writing all through my youth, right? Like I started at like 11 and was writing books pretty much through college. And when I became a flight attendant at like 22, 23, I was like, oh, I'm going to be serving Coke for the rest of my life if I don't start pursuing my dream of being published. So I wrote a book and I decided to query it, and it didn't get any requests. And I queried it for a year and I amassed 100 rejections. I didn't even get any full requests or partial requests. Like it just silence. Got 100 rejections and I was like, okay, let's try a new one. And so I wrote another book and I got another 100 rejections on that one. And then I was like, all right, let's try again. Here's my third book, like this was, I think, book number 9 or 10 or something. And I wrote that and it also got like 50 rejections, but a couple requests, which was like, ooh, progress. In that time, I had started reading like pretty much every craft book I could find on writing to like actually become commercialized with it. Because before that point, I was just having fun, right? I was writing what I wanted. I didn't think too much about plot structure. I didn't really think about world building or character development. It wasn't like a concentrated thing for me. And then in those couple of years, that's when I started to like learn about the business and like learn about querying and like learn about how I should fix my first 50 pages and things like that. So it was not like it was like I was more like throwing spaghetti at the wall rather than like any targeted approach, even though it felt targeted at the time. Looking back, I'm like, it's a good thing those books were not picked up by anybody because they were not good. I got an agent on that third book and I had her for 4 years, and we went on submission with 4 books and one of them sold and 3 of them died on submission. So editors didn't want the other ones. The one that did sell was a middle grade book called The Secrets of Star Whales. And it sold to a mid-level press for a very small advance, like $1,000 or something, right? And it was out of print in like a year and a half because like it released over COVID. There was no like big event. They had it in bookstores, but like this is something that I didn't really realize with traditional publishing. Like depending on the advance and like the press who's publishing you, even if you get in bookstores initially, they may not restock your book. And that's a problem if you want to make book sales, right? Like if they had the copies, they sold. But like, for example, my local Barnes & Noble had 2 copies on launch week. My best friend went in day 1 and bought both of them. And they never restocked that book, like literally never. And I was like, you sold out on day 1. Why didn't you go get more? But like, it's just because I was an unknown author and they didn't trust that they would sell them, so they never restocked. So I had I had a book out traditionally, and it was not the experience I was hoping it would be. Like the advance was very minimal. I still couldn't quit my job. I was like trying, like people kept emailing me, well, where can I find like my friends, right? Distant relatives and things. I went to Barnes and Noble and I tried to find your book and I couldn't find it there. And I was like, man, this sucks. Like if my book is still not going to be in bookstores with the traditional route with an agent and everything, why am I wasting my time with this, right? Like in the meantime, there's just a lot of red tape about like I wrote a sequel to that series. They didn't buy the sequel. We couldn't take it out in submission anywhere else because the first book was already sold to a different publisher, right? Like, you know, and even though it was a companion novel, they still were like, well, it's in the same world as another book that's been published by a different press, and we don't really want to get involved in that. So I just kind of looked at all of this and was like, this is like stagnating my career. And I didn't even ask for this, you know, like I didn't want this. Like, this is not what I expected it would be. So I left my literary agent, and that was right around the time I picked up Legends and Lattes. So I left my literary agent. I read Legends and Lattes. I was like, I'm going to write a cozy fantasy and I'm going to self-publish. And I didn't self-publish with any goal of making like massive success. Like it was obviously, again, a dream, but every book was a dream, right? Like every book we publish, we hope is going to make it big. With that book, my goal was to learn the self-publishing process because I was earning my MFA at the time and I wanted to become a professor. And I was like, if I'm going to teach, I need to know how to do the things that I'm going to be teaching. So I went ahead and did the whole self-publishing process. I documented it all on TikTok. I from start to finish, like from the moment I started writing my cozy fantasy, I was documenting it on TikTok. And that ended up being a really good thing because by the time it came out, everybody was dying for more Legends and Lattes. I strategically set my launch date a month before the new release of Legends and Lattes. So not the self-publishing one in February, but the one that came out in October. And I put my book out a month before that. I had a ton of people who were interested in ARC reading. I had a ton of people who were interested in beta reading, and book sales the first week, like the first month, I think I hit like 1,000 book sales in a month, or 700 book sales in a month or something, which was really wild for a brand new indie author.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm laughing because I'm like, I even just had this conversation earlier today. Someone was talking about how like, oh, Treason is your first self-published book. And like, yeah, it's my first self-published book that went wide in the traditional like self-publishing sense, right? Like traditional self-publishing sense. But I actually self-published 4 books in high school that I just distributed to friends and family. So like, it isn't even really my first self-published book. It's just the first one I put on Amazon. But it was a whole different process, that is more business focused and real, right? Yeah. And it was a very good experience for me. So by the time, we had a super successful Christmas season. By the time January rolled around, I was getting interest from foreign and domestic presses. So I had an offer from the UK, and I connected with a literary agent who deals with UK, like foreign agents. She's a foreign agent, so she does abroad. And she negotiated that offer into a 4-house auction that Tor UK eventually won. And then I was able to basically go to her and be like, hey, if I was going to offer Tor US, because I got another offer from a Barnes and Noble's press in US. And I was like looking at it and I was like, I don't really want to accept this offer for Barnes and Noble, but I guess I can. But then I emailed her and was like, if we were going to just go on like an exclusive submission with Tor US, now that Tor UK has already jumped on board, what do you think? And she was like, I think we can probably do it. So we did it. Tor US jumped on board in like literally 24 hours. Like we told them they read amazing. The book overnight. Yeah. And that doesn't happen, right? Like that's not typical. That's not normal. That's the luck, right? Like I got lucky that Tor UK was interested in being a part of that process, connecting with my agent who knew how to leverage that UK into a 4-house auction that Tor UK was like interested in joining. That was luck. Like that felt like luck to me, even though like people can look back and be like, oh, that was skill. It's not, it's just knowing the right people at the right time and then having them do their thing, And so I was very lucky to be able to grab Tor US as well. And then they took my Tomes and Tea series and it kind of ran with it, and we republished it a year later, and that's kind of where we've been. It's been a wild ride for the last 2 years. I think I'm still kind of waiting for the House of Cards to fall. Like I think a lot of people, and again, this is just because I've been in the industry so long. I think a lot of people assume that when you get luck like mine and like experience like mine, you're going to be a solid person, a solid player forever. And that just isn't true for a lot of authors. Like you'll have one book series that does really well and you might get book sales moving forward, but it all kind of depends on the hype in the acquisitions meeting when they're deciding whether or not to buy new books from you. So if you are perceived to have done well and you're perceived to still be like a hot author, like this is the next hot author, they'll offer a lot more for you. But if your book does okay, and then you try to leverage that in a new offer, they might not have that same kind of hype, right? So they might offer you a good deal, but not a great deal, right? And that just kind of comes down to the industry. So every book I kind of treat as like, this is my next chance to prove that I am still a player who can produce good books quickly, well, and I should be able to stick around for a while, hopefully, but I definitely am not quitting my day job even now. Like I'm still a flight attendant. I don't trust it. I feel like it just feels like it's going to crash down around me at any point. So,
Well, it brings to mind an article I was reading. Now, these numbers might not be exactly the same today because this was about 2 years ago.
mm-hmm.
But I had read an article that said for self-published authors, the average number of copies a book will sell is about 200 to 250.
Yeah,
And
that's
even
probably about
for,
right.
yeah, probably still about right because you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
like there are those who get lucky and sell an
Yeah.
amazingly, 100,000
Mm-hmm.
copies. And then, but then you have so many that sell like two and
Pennies. Yeah.
it's their
Mm-hmm.
mom. Like,
Right. Right.
so yeah, I'd say about like 200, 250. What I found really interesting about that article is it also said that for traditionally published authors, the average number of copies a book will sell is 1,000.
And that's probably also about right.
Yeah, so like we
Mm-hmm.
think of it as like, yes, it is still more. That's four
Mm-hmm.
times the average.
Yeah.
But so many readers, I think, see like traditionally published authors and think like, oh, they must all be selling, 50,000
Millions and
copies
millions of,
and
yeah.
making,
Mm-hmm.
six figures a year. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just not the reality for the vast
Yeah.
majority of authors. And
Mm-hmm.
I think people would be surprised if they knew how many authors have a full-time job or at least a, full-time working spouse who's able to, kind of
I was gonna
supplement that
say the
income.
spouse is kind of the key because I feel
Hmm.
like I was perpetually single throughout my 20s, right? Like while I'm querying, it's me. It's just me. I had roommates and you know, and I worked, right? And I feel like that's one of those things that a lot of people don't address is like a lot of the stay-at-home authors that are stay-at-home authors are also like moms who are going to be stay at home anyway, or they have a spouse who has a really good job that can luckily support them both and they can drop down to part-time and write the rest of the time. So my recommendation for people who don't have that situation is to find a job that you don't hate that can still find you time. So I remember hearing this quote that was kind of like, if you work with your hands during the day, you need to be working with your brain at night and vice versa. So like if you're working with your brain during the day, you need to be working with your hands at night, so that you're kind of like doing the physical and mental side of things. So I have a lot of friends who went into jobs where they're editing or, copy editing, marketing writers, like they're writing, right? But they're writing articles, they're writing journalist stuff, they're editing books and they don't write for fun anymore, ever, because they don't have the mental bandwidth to get off of a job about writing and move into writing their personal projects. Meanwhile, I have a job that is very hands-on, right? Like I'm dealing with my hands all day. It's like it's very easy, but like it's very social based, right? So when I get to my hotel room at night, the last thing I want to do is talk to anybody. And the only thing I really want to do is open up a Word document and like lose myself in a book for a bit. So it was very easy for me to write on my overnights while I was, and then when flight attendants are on the jump seat on a 5 hour flight, eventually people don't want Coke anymore. So like
Yep.
we can sit in the
Eventually
yeah,
they'll leave
right.
you
Like
alone.
you hit a point where they're just like, leave me alone. I want to watch my movie. And I'm like, okay. And I go and I sit in the back alley and I would pull out my laptop and I write then too. So there's actually a lot of flight attendants that have published books out, like TJ Newman was, I think, an American or American maybe flight attendant. I can't remember what airline she was with, but she was a flight attendant. She writes, airplane thrillers now. Jazz Hammonds, We Deserve Monuments, also a flight attendant. So I feel like there's a lot of flight attendants that I'm seeing in the industry that do this. And I think it's just because they found a job that lets them work with their hands during the day so they can work with their brains at night. So I think if anybody's trying to figure out how to find that balance, like keep that in mind. Like you can go find some kind of blue collar job that may not pay as well, but like you will probably enjoy more than some office job that pays better. And you will still have the energy at night to pursue the things that you're actually interested in. So
I think that's really good advice.
It's
You
worked
know,
out well
I'm
for me.
always, yeah, yeah, it's working for you so far. I'm always looking for ways to kind of balance. You know, I work in corporate finance during the day,
Hmm.
and then I podcast on my lunch breaks, and sometimes, the middle of the night. And then I squeeze in some writing whenever I have the mental capacity left to do
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, which sometimes I'll have like a month where I'm writing every day and then I won't touch it for like 8 months. And I'm
Mood.
currently in that don't touch it for 8 months cycle right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that too. I'll write a book in a month and then I won't look at writing for 3 months. Like I'm just like, nope, not going to do it. Got other things to do, and I'll keep myself busy with a bunch of other stuff. So
So, what is it like having two novels releasing in the same year?
chaos. But not because of the two novels releasing in the same year. It's because I like that schedule a lot. Like I think I was actually meant to be an indie author. And the rapid release schedule of the indie authors actually works really well for me because I feel like I spent 8 years of my life in pursuing traditional publication, writing fast and then being told wait. Right? Like wait, wait, wait,
Yes.
wait, wait. That's all traditional publishing is. It's like hurry up and wait. And I feel like I looked at the last 8 years and I was like, I could have been making such strides if I'd been self publishing because I could have been self publishing 2 books a year with the amount that I write or 3 books a year. And I could be making money now, like I could have been bringing in income because even if it was, negligible, right? Even if all those books only sold 250 books a pop, that still would have been something that would have been extra as opposed to me just sitting around languishing in traditional publishing for ages, waiting for someone to notice me. And I think the only reason they noticed me is because I left. Like I left traditional publishing and I went to indie and I proved I could do it. And then all of a sudden, these publishers, these big publishers that I like literally Tor was my dream publisher. I was waiting for them to notice me. We got rejection after rejection after rejection, right? And then the minute I go and self publish and I have a book that I'm proving is doing really well, they come to my and like the fact that they came to my door, I was just like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like this, like after being in this industry for so long, this is so stupid that this is how it's happening. But that's how it happened. It was like I needed to prove that I could do it. And what's interesting to me now is that I actually feel like I have more say in my books these days. Like my publisher listens to me when I tell them that I want it packaged a certain way because I've already shown that I can package it a certain way. So when they come to me, they ask me, what do you think we should do for the cover? What do you think? What color sprayed edges do you think we should be doing? How would you like this marketed? Are there any specific places you want to see this book? And they ask me those things. And I don't think they ask many authors that. I feel like it's more of like a specific thing for Bramble, who buys more self-published books than most other imprints. So a lot of their authors in Bramble are very skilled in marketing their own books and they talk to their readers daily, right? Like we all have,
Yes.
social
Mm.
media followings. I talk to my readers. I know what they're waiting for. And if I have a new book idea, it literally is as easy as me posting a video and being like, what do you want to see in a book like this? And I get comments after comments after comments of people who are like, I want to see this element, add this, add this. So I take that and I crunch it all together and I write that book. And then of course my publisher is like, oh, well, we know it'll sell because like she literally got it from the people who are going to be buying it. So it's been a really interesting kind of balance, I think, between traditional and self. But yeah, I write too fast. So the 2 books in a year, I'm glad. I love it. I hope that we can keep that schedule up. I would like to do 3 this year if we can manage it. I'd love to see if we can add another one in closer to the winter season, but we'll have to see. It obviously depends on their schedule as well. So, but yeah, if they can publish 2 of my books a year, I'll be a happy camper for the next 10 years.
I'd have to say that is one thing I have noticed how indie and self-publishing has really influenced publishing as a whole is
Hmm.
by forcing the industry to speed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Self-published
we're not
authors can
content
knock out a book
sitting.
every couple of months, and
Hmm.
readers get used to that schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
Readers don't want to wait 3 years
Hmm.
in
Well,
between
and I think too, for
books
like the
anymore.
Tomes and Tea books, like these quartet, we're losing readers. Like if we did one a year, we'd be losing readers for 4 years because there's a lot of people who won't even bother picking up a book series until they know it's finished. Like
Yep.
they won't even read it until they know it's finished. Like I have so many people who have it on their TBR, but they won't buy it yet because they're like, it's not finished yet. So it's nice for me to be like, it's finishing in August. period, full stop. This book is done. Like this series is done in August. And everyone's like, oh, well, now I'll buy it because that's not that long to wait. I could read 3 books since, until August. And then August comes and I've got the ending and we're good. So I feel like that like rapid release schedule is better for literally everybody. Like authors get paid, which gives us more time to write more books, and then they make more money, and then we make more money, and then readers get to read these stories quicker than the normal release of every year, right? Just it's just yeah, it's interesting to me because I do feel like indie authors found that rhythm, and it's hard. Like those indie authors that are churning out 4 books a year, they're working their ass off for that, but they're usually making bank at the end of it because that rapid release schedule keeps you relevant. It keeps you in a social media world where everything is moving so fast. You almost need books coming out that often in order to stay relevant for people to remember who you are. So
Absolutely. And I would also like to add, for so long, self-publishing as a way to publish was looked down on, and it was always the I self-published because I wasn't good enough to get anywhere else kind of mindset going on. And that's just how people
yeah,
kind of
the
looked at it.
fallback.
hmm And over the last, I want to say over the last like 5, 6 years, that has not only changed, but it's changed so much to the point where self-publishing is setting the trends
Hands down.
that
Yeah.
then traditional publishers pick up on and follow in order, to make their money. But self-publishing, they are self-published authors are really pioneering the new trends. I mean, romantasy came from fan fiction,
I was
first of all.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's I think that it all kind of relates to TikTok and how TikTok kind of plays into the industry at large. Like before TikTok, it was Twitter. That was like where book news happened, and then BookTok comes in blaring. And these BookTok like influencers, they don't care whether a book is self-published or traditional. Most of them don't even know the difference, right? Like not anymore. Now they obviously I think do, but back then I don't think they realized like this book is indie, this book is trad, because they weren't really finding these books on Barnes and Noble. They weren't going to the bookstore and finding them because they're not popular yet. They're finding them on like smaller sites, right? Like they're finding them on like tiny videos of people and they're waving this book around and they're like, oh, I'll buy that, and then they buy it. And then they read it and they love it. And all of a sudden, the publishers in 2021 and 2022, at a time when the rest of the industry was drastically slowing down, right? Like my book release for my middle grade book that came out was pushed back by 6 months because of COVID. So like it was supposed to come out in fall of 2020, and they pushed it back to spring of 2021 because they were literally like, we don't know what's happening with the book industry. So it was almost like the whole of the publishing industry took a breath. And in that breath, BookTok just zoomed right in and was like, now we know what we want.
And
I think there was a lot of power to that for readers. Like I think there was a lot of power to that because before BookTok, they didn't really have the ability to say. It was like the publishers were like, you are going to like this book, you're going to read it, you're going to love it. And the readers are like, well, yeah, it was fine, but like I kind of wanted to read more of this type of book instead. And then all of a sudden, these books are starting to get more notice, and the publishers who thought that they could predict and so like my MFA, one of the classes I took, the reason I got on TikTok is because in 2022, I took a class by, he ended up becoming one of the head acquiring editors at Disney's Press, like one of the head of acquisitions in Disney's Press. And, but he was just, working, I think at HarperCollins or something before that point. So he came in to teach one class on marketing, and he literally was just like, like day one, he comes into the class and he's just like, get on BookTok. And we're like, why? And he's like, we don't know what to do with it. Like he literally was just like, we're in acquisitions. We have no idea what is going to sell anymore because BookTok is making that decision for us. We used to make that decision. BookTok is making that decision for us now. And that is kind of opening up a space where like these people who made those decisions now, like on BookTok, they don't know the difference between indie or trad, or they don't care. Either they don't know or they don't care. And I think that's just kind of a beautiful place that we've landed, where now all of a sudden people can ask for the diverse books they've been wanting to read. They can pick up the queer books that they were trying to find and couldn't, which is lovely.
I just love how he comes into this marketing class and says, get on BookTok. And that's the class. Like that
was basically
that was it.
Yeah, like he spent the whole rest of the time talking about like what happens in acquisitions and like how they make decisions in acquisitions and like how they look at authors with platforms and how they look at authors without platforms and how all of that kind of plays into what they're offering during that acquisitions meeting. And it was very interesting to listen to, and there was a lot of really good stuff. One of his assignments, actually, his class was my favorite, hands down, in my MFA. One of his assignments was to go to a local bookstore and physically find the shelf that your book is placed on. Because a lot of people write these like cross-genre books that can't really be categorized. But the problem is that publishers are really hesitant to offer on those books that can't be categorized because they can't tell a bookseller where to put it in the store. So like at the very end of the day, the bookseller has to know where to physically shelf your book. And if there's not a clear answer, they're not going to want to buy it because they don't know where to physically shelve it, right? So he had us walk around and physically take pictures in our bookstore of what shelves we think it would go on. And BookTok could be one of the shelves, right? Like if it was a BookTok success, we could take a picture of the BookTok table and be like, this is where my book would be. But he wanted to know, like, is it going to be in the fantasy section? Is it going to be in the contemporary section? Is it going to be in the romance section? What about the romantasy section, right? Like, what about, the thriller section, mystery? Like, find where it's going to be and keep that in mind while you're writing your book, because that is going to be the most important factor in the very end, is like, how can they market it? How can they sell it? Right? Because that's all that business is how do you sell the books that are being written? Doesn't matter if they're amazing or prodigal if they can't be sorted,
And that honestly kind of brings us into a whole nother discussion, which maybe we'll have to do a part 2 sometime on
I would be delighted.
The loss of BookTok is going to affect.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Bookstores, authors, even, those in acquisitions. Like, how is that going to affect the industry, and what is the industry doing to prepare for that? So I feel like that's going to be a whole nother
it will be it'll be really interesting to watch how that all pans out. Right now, I think that Instagram, like TikTok, has kind of been on the downhill slope since they introduced TikTok Shop. I will say in the months since they almost took it away and then didn't, I have seen a resurgence in the old form of TikTok, minus all the political news, which is needed but is a lot. So I feel like we're starting to see a lot more engagement on TikTok in a way that I haven't seen since like probably early 2023 kind of vibe. I think Instagram, as much as I hate it, is kind of the place where people are going now to sell books. Like Instagram is harder to get followers on. It takes a lot longer, but the people who are there, someone once told me that they like TikTok viewers are there to be entertained and Instagram viewers are there to buy. Like they're there to buy things, So if you go online and you start promoting your book on TikTok and on Instagram, you can almost always notice a physical trend, like upwards. Like I'll notice a visibility trend in my viral videos on TikTok. Like my website will get more visits. But with Instagram, if I have the same kind of viral video, I'll get more sales. Like I can track that in the book sales the next week, So it's kind of interesting to see the difference, right? Like what's better? Is it word of mouth, or is it, and how do you even trace those books for word of mouth? Or is it just actual buying of books because you had a link in a viral video? Tough to say.
Yeah, so it's something that is really only going to be time will tell.
Yeah.
On where we're going to see, the shift, the second deadline on TikTok. It is coming, and I don't think it's going to be extended again. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what the industry does to adapt.
The recording software is what I'm going to miss the most.
Yes.
Like and the trending sounds. Like all of our trending sounds
TikTok
come
had
from
the
TikTok.
best sounds.
Like all of our trending sounds come from TikTok. How are you supposed to make like those 3-second or 8-second videos do so well on Instagram? But they're all because they're from TikTok, and then 3 months later they show up on Instagram and everyone's like, oh, these are so funny. And it's like, those have been around for a while. Like
those have been around so long that they're actually not even popular on TikTok.
They're actually not even around anymore. Yeah, they've been around so long, they're actually not even around anymore. So, but good on you guys for catching up on these trends.
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see where the industry goes and what's next.
Yeah, I agree.
And on that note, thank you again, Rebecca, for joining me on Must Love Books podcast. I'm really excited for TU at the Altar. And for
I'm also excited.
Yes, and then for Alchemy and a Cup of Tea in just a few months.
Yes, coming out very quickly, the way I like it.
Do you have any final messages you would like to share with our listeners?
If you're a writer, don't get discouraged. Keep going. You can't get struck by lightning if you're not standing in the field. And if you are a reader, thank you so much for supporting everybody, including our indie authors, because they need you more than some. So please continue to read diversely. Please continue to pick up books that you've never heard of before, because they might be your next favorite novel. You never know.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets, with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.